we're back over here with the button mower, and I blew out the underside here, cleaned off some of the grease fittings. There's a lot of grease on there, which is good. It means it was probably well maintained. We're going to put more grease in it, obviously, before we put everything back. We got to get the rest of these belts off. One of the things I did do without you, I'm sorry, I just couldn't help myself. I took this bracket off. It bolts underneath, so you didn't have to sit there and watch me get that from underneath. But I mean, this is a steel guide. I mean, they just don't make guides like this anymore. They're usually plastic if you have them at all. And I mean, this is just a really solid mower, and that's one of the things I really like about it. So we're going to get off the main drive belt and the spindle to spindle belts. In order to do that, main drive belt should pop right off. This is your tensioner right here. And kind of goes around in the back over here too. Again, guides are getting in the way. Those nice, good steel guides. See if I can just maneuver it around just a little bit. Oh, there it goes. One side. I'll have to get to the other side of the mower here. There's actually two of them underneath on the bottom here. Well, it looks like I might have to loosen that bracket up. But what I want to do is, in order to get to everything, all these belts have to come off in order to get to this one. Now this one is actually in pretty good shape. This is the spindle to spindle belt. And I actually already loosened this bolt up. So this should come off fairly easy. Just got to pull this linkage off. And this wheel right here. Which should then give me enough slack, hopefully. Just to pop this part right off. Let's move the box of fun parts out of the way. And there you go. Now, a lot of guys just like to take these and just throw them on the ground and be like, hey. Yeah, I'm actually going to save that. The reason why is I have to order these belts. So regardless, even depending on where I order them, it's going to take a day or two to get them. So I want to make sure that if one does break, I have something I can throw on there really quick to at least get me through the time frame that I need it until the new belt comes in. Because these belts are still got some life in them. It was actually this belt that I wanted to really replace. That's the one that's kind of falling apart. I probably could get quite a bit more out of that one. In a sense, I like to save those belts. It's a weird thing. My dad, growing up, changed a fan belt. If it still was intact, he'd take it and he'd put it in the back of the car and say, just in case I need to do a roadside fix. I think I only had one car with that, and literally that car ate belts like you wouldn't believe. I actually started buying new belts to throw in the trunk so I could do roadside fixes with that. And maybe it's that experience that I now hang on to pretty much any belt that seems to be somewhat intact. So now I'm having some issues over here with this retainer, probably this belt, which is the proper thickness. Is too thick to fit around this lock right here. Again, nice big steel metal lock. They really took a lot of care. They made these mowers to last. Man, this is going to be more difficult than I thought it was. One of the things I did when I put this thing, took the cover off, I took the PB blast and I nailed all of the bolts on underside here. I don't know how long it's been since they've been removed or anything like that. I'm not going to be removing all of them. There we go. But if I ever do need to remove any of them, I want to make sure that they're not all seized up. This gives it a kind of a go, an extra go, so that moment in time when I got to put it, reapply it, we can do that. Make sure that goes underneath the linkage. Slip this around here, it goes on the bottom. And then I want to kind of inspect this, make sure everything's moving okay. Bearings actually seem really good in this, which is good because they're sealed bearings. This is one of those parts I probably should try to find a number on, which I don't see one, and take note of that. So what I did is I wrote that number down. We're going to look that part up later. It's not, I'm going to use this part. This one's actually in pretty good shape. The bearing seems to have a little bit of a tug on it, but it seems to have a lot of life left in it. So we're going to keep this. We're not going to replace it right away, but we got the number. We'll look it up, maybe see how much the part is. Maybe we will replace it. Maybe we won't. I don't know. But we've got this bottom belt on, this blade-to-blade belt on. I'm glad I need to clear my head and everything, try to figure out how to get this back on. Turns out there is a tensioner on this. And if you can come in closer, I'll show it to you. So yeah, when you look in closer here, this wheel that I had actually taken off is on a swivel arm that moves this way. This here is on the spring and it will spring back this way. This is the tensioner. So the tensioner hits that swivel arm which locks it. So as the belt expands and stretches, this should move in forward. And the little notches in here will lock and it shouldn't allow it to move back in the same position. So you always have a tight belt sitting on both of those. But what's also really cool about this is something else was on this bottom belt off the mower. And it still has the original, here I'll bring it in for you, the original marking on it with the belt number on it. This is a button belt. This is right there, Button Company Incorporated, PL0643. And I'm able to then cross-check it because it says it right here on the package, Button PL0643. So I know I got the exact right belt. This belt was a little bit more stretched than this. But what's nice is this belt is actually, that was on there, is OME equipment, which means original manufacturer equipment. So I know that this is the right belt. I'm pretty positive that that would be the right belt to go on there. I'm a little bit nervous about the next belt because when I sized them up, the belt that was on here is actually shorter than the other belt. And that might be part of the problems that I'm having with this, with all of the speeds and the engagement and everything else, is the size of that belt. So that could be a blessing or it could be a curse. I will find out. But right now I'm just kind of guessing that the information that I have is correct. So we're going to go ahead and hook up the linkage over here, back up for our lock, and get moving on to the next belt. So as I was saying, this is the old belt, this is the new belt. The new belt is significantly larger, well, maybe not significantly, but it's larger than the old belt, which is kind of a little on the concerning part of that. But we're going to go give it a go anyways. I can remember how to put it back on. What's interesting about the belt functions on these button mowers is there's no zigzags in them. Usually they'll try to use one belt and use it all on every pulley and make it move everything. Because of the multiple belts, literally all of these belts just basically go on the outside of all the pulleys, which is something fascinating and interesting in itself. So we just gotta go and hit up in the back and get that belt on. You know what we're going to do? We're going to keep it off the tensioner and put the belt on back here. Back here to keep the belt in place. Make sure that's not once we get everything in place. And then all that has to happen then is like that. Now, if this is all adjusted properly, which it's not for this belt, because like I said, this belt is bigger, there shouldn't be any slack when I do that, because that's what's going to engage the belts. So we're going to have to make some adjustments in order to tighten up that belt back there. So this deck drive belt is the one that I really needed to replace. If you can see right through there, the nice little hole that's made. This belt is still intact in one piece, so what I might try to do is, I've done this before with equipment, and they like it better when the belt's intact, but I can take it over to AutoZone and they can go ahead and measure this and basically find a replacement belt for this based on its measurements. So that's one of the plus sides that I got on it. So we'll try that, and if it tends to be the wrong belt, I can always return it and try to scavenge around and find the right number and find the right belt. But yeah, that belt that I had found, wrong belt. So this is where we're at. We've hit a snag. This is one of those parts that have to be replaced. So I just can't reuse the old one. And it's going to be a little more time, so we'll see what happens.